Hey, have you subscribed to my channel? Well, make sure you do that and turn on notifications. Okay, so as a psychic therapist and medium for over 37 years, I have had some of the most bizarre and crazy experiences ever. I mean, working with people and spirits that have crossed over and spirits who have not crossed over, communicating with animals, and yes, even communicating with aliens. I know that sounds crazy. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but it's true. Okay. I'd love to share one of those stories with you, and it's a ghost story. Yeah, it's a very special story that I absolutely love. Several years ago, there was a television show in Chicago, You and Me This Morning, that would bring me over. They fell in love with my work. And they would bring me over, and we would do segments of these haunted places in Chicago. I would go there, see what I picked up, and then do what I can to heal the place. Healing Chicago, that's what it was about. So this one particular episode was about Camp Douglas and the hauntings at the cemetery attached to Camp Douglas. Camp Douglas was one of the largest prisoner of war camps run by the Northern Army that housed over 33,000 Confederate soldiers, 33,000 soldiers, and they were all jammed in the barracks there. And they passed along illnesses, and they were dying of malnutrition and diseases and unbelievable things. Some of them, they would just toss the bodies aside there. Others, they used to take the bodies, jam them on a train, and bring them down to the cemetery where they would bury them there. Well, the hauntings mostly went on in the cemetery. So my producer and the camera team, we went to the cemetery to see what I picked up, and it was unbelievable. As soon as we arrived there, all of us felt just drained instantaneously. We felt the negative energy that was going around. But then I started seeing soldiers, Civil War soldiers. And it's kind of like transparent. It's like if you close your eyes and you imagined a Civil War soldier and you're seeing it with your mind's eye. Well, that's one way of seeing it, but that transparency, that's exactly what I saw outside of my mind, right? And so they're all walking around, but they're all jammed in this one big area. And in this cemetery, the way it was separated from the rest of the cemetery is there were 4 cannons, north, south, east, and west on the plot. And they are all on the inside of that area, just stuck there, just roaming around. It almost looked like a scene from Grand Central Station during rush hour in New York City. Holy cow. And so, yes, I was able to see them. I can hear also, I know, and I also sense and feel them. So there they are. And the camera's going, and I'm telling my producer everything that I'm seeing, right? And I'm like, why are they all just stuck here? And all of a sudden, I hear a voice. There's nobody else around. My producer's not saying anything, and the voice says, we'll figure it out. And he sounded a little angry. And I'm like, who is this? And he says, I'm one of the soldiers here. Okay, so now one of them is talking with me. And I'm hearing him pretty clearly, which is pretty amazing. Usually they try to make sense of what they're trying to say, but this guy was really clear, and he seemed pretty upset. So I'm like, okay, they're all stuck here for a reason. Is that what you're saying? He says, yes. And they haven't moved on because of it. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, well, the only thing that I see are these 4 cannons and then a monument. There was a monument, a big giant monument erected in the middle of the cemetery there. I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt finally put one up there in that cemetery, commemorating the area and honoring the dead soldiers. That's what it was about. And on the monument were plaques and with the engraving of every soldier that was buried there. And there were a couple of hundred soldiers buried in that small area. And there they were, a lot of them that I saw just roaming around. And he said, go look at the cannons. I said, go look at the cannons. I said, the cannons, they're old Civil War cannons. But I went up to him. I did what he said. I mean, there's no harm. And I looked, and there's plaques on them, and they were made by a northern manufacturer. Those were northern military cannons. They weren't Confederate cannons. They were northern military cannons, and there were 4 of them. And so the soldiers, the spirits, felt as if they were still imprisoned there, which is the reason why they weren't moving on. Those particular ones that were stuck. They weren't roaming around the city. That's usually what happens with spirits when they've been on the earthly plane for so many years. They wind up just moving away and going away from where they were originally killed or died. But these didn't. They stayed right there. It's because they felt like they were prisoners. So I was like, wow, I was besides myself, and I was going to do everything that I could to help them. And what I do when there is a lost soul at all is I communicate with my higher guides, Archangel Michael, God, whomever's around that can send me down a light and at least help shine it for them. Open the door, open a vortex. I've done that many, many, many times. And so I did that. So my producer and I, we're praying, we're saying, come on, bring down the light for them so that these soldiers can move on. I'm talking to the soldiers and telling them, you got to move on, go through the light. And I'm seeing a whole bunch go through. And as they're going through and I see them, now, mind you, the producer, the cameraman, the soundman, they don't have the same ability that I do. So, but they're all of a sudden saying, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this electrical energy as if something powerful is here. And I'm just feeling this lightheartedness. And so they're explaining what they're feeling as the light is there. And I mean, it's just like a television movie, okay? We see it all the time, right? The Ghost Whisperer, all of them. All these things happen when the ghosts walk through the light, right? Well, that happened. So I'm figuring, okay, we're done. We can wrap it up. And I hear this spirit talk to me. Again, he says, I'm still here. I said, wait a minute. Why didn't you cross over and go through the light? He says, I don't need to. That's not my journey. It's not your journey. Oh, wow. Are you buried here? He says, yes, I am. You're standing on me. At that moment, my producer was about ready to tell me he wanted to wrap things up because he was feeling nauseous, and he was standing right next to me. So the both of us were standing on the grave of this guy, and so he was feeling it, and I didn't feel it because I'm well protected. We jump off. My producer feels better, and the guy continues. He says, yes, I'm here. You can see my name on the plaque. So I'm like, okay, so now he's going to be giving me evidence, real evidence here. This is really cool. I'm like, okay, so what's your name, right? Now, that's a hard thing to get for mediums, is to get specific answers. He turns around, not only gives me a first name, he gives me a last name, Patrick Rainey. Patrick Rainey, oh my gosh, great. So we run up to the monument and we're looking, searching, Rainey, all the R's. Oh, and there were several R's, but there was no Rainey. There was no Rainey, Patrick Rainey. I don't understand. Why are you giving me Patrick Rainey? It's not here. You said it's here. And so I was doubting it, but then all of a sudden it came to me, and he says, think. And I'm thinking, and I'm going, wait a minute. He's a military man. They would never have their first name first. It's always their last name first. So in the military, I would be Jenna Vincent, no matter what, not Vincent Jenna. So I reverse it. And I go, that's it. It's Rainey Patrick. Okay, Rainey is an odd first name, but Patrick is definitely a last name. So we go over and we look, Patrick, there's a Patrick. But it's S. Patrick. And I'm feeling it's him. There are a couple of other Patricks, but there's a Bob Patrick, Robert Patrick, not Rainey. That didn't sound right, but I kept being drawn to the S. Patrick. And I asked him, I said, is this you? He said, yes. I said, but it's S. Patrick. He says, that's okay. Okay, all right, I'll take it, S. Patrick. And right next to his name is engraved what state he was originally from, and then the unit he was in. Now, he was in the cavalry because it said CAV, and he was unit 143. So there is S. Patrick, Texas, CAV 143. And if you're ever in that area, you can go look him up because that's engraved there in that plaque. I can't make that up. And plus, I've got a video of it on my website. You can see the whole segment. It's very cool. So there it is. He's there. And I said, okay, so how did you die here? And he said, I died of pneumonia. So he died of pneumonia. Wow, okay, that's pretty bad. I said, but you're staying around here. I'm sorry that you're staying around. He said, don't be sorry. Okay, all right. Anything else you want to tell me about you? He says, yes, I was Jewish. My family was Jewish. And I'm like, okay, I'm married to a Jewish woman, even though her name is Eileen Francis, which is really Irish. But Patrick is definitely not a Jewish name. Now, maybe if Patrick was the father's name and the mother's name was Jewish and they raised him Jewish, whatever, maybe that's where the Rainey comes in. I don't know. But I'm like, Patrick, okay, that sounds all right. Okay, so you were Jewish. Yes, he was Jewish. Jewish, died at 23 years old. 23 years old. That's really young and sad, okay? Of pneumonia, buried there. I'm like, okay, well, sorry, I can't help you or do anything else. He said, thank you, you already did. And I'm like, okay. I assume he was talking about me getting the other soldiers away. And we started leaving, figuring I was leaving him behind. But boy, was I surprised. We get halfway down the block going towards our cars, and all of a sudden I hear him again. But this time he turns around and he says, tell your friend I don't like the football team or the coach that he's rooting for. Now I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This guy can't be a ghost, because ghosts or spirits that are stuck here in the earthly plane, they don't get that information. Yes, they can see more than we can see because they're in another dimension, but they don't know anything about us personally that they can use to talk to us about. Only spirits who have crossed over do that. And I said to him, I said, you are not a lost spirit, are you? He said, no, I'm a guardian. He's a guardian. I'm like, so you're a guardian? He says, I hang here until all my brothers are crossed over. And until then, I will be staying here. After, I will come back to the other side. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow, okay. And that was the first time that I really learned that about guardians, which was incredible. So I turned to my producer and I said, Mr. Patrick is here, and he has a message for you. And my producer's like, what does he have to say about me? He said, he doesn't like the football team you're rooting for or the coach. I said, who are you rooting for? And I did not realize that he comes from Pennsylvania. And so, of course, one of the teams that he was rooting for was Penn State. This was the year that the coach from Penn State was getting in trouble because of abusing the football players, the team members. And so this spirit, Mr. Patrick, was telling me that he didn't like that and that my friend was still rooting for Penn State. He was letting me know in those terms that he was a spirit that had moved on, but that he was only here, like he said, as a guardian. So I thought that was just amazing in itself. But no, it doesn't end. That morning, when I rented my car, as I fly in from Raleigh to Chicago, rent a car. You know, when you're at the rental agent, they pick the car for you, whatever car they want to give you. Even though you rent this, they give you this. Right? So they come pulling up with the car. I get in the car, and the Bluetooth isn't working, and I need Bluetooth. So I get out of the car. I say, I need another car. This isn't working. So they bring another car. I get in. The air conditioning isn't working on that one. And so I'm really fed up. And I'm like, okay, listen, thank you very much for helping me. But let me know, what are the car choices I have? I'll pick my own car. So that was the only morning I decided to pick my own rental car. Why does that matter? Because when my producer and I arrived at my car, all of a sudden he turned white as if he saw a ghost. But he couldn't. I know he can't. I said, what's the matter? He said, Vince, look at your license plate. I look at my license plate, and I'm telling you, this is the honest truth. The plate is from Texas. The plate number is CAV 143 and an 8. The 8 didn't matter, but Texas, CAV 143. That's his unit. That's where he was in, the division, the state. Holy cow. That is not just a coincidence. That was letting me know this must have been planned in some way. But that isn't all of it. Okay, here's the best part. The best part happened the next day when we were in the studio and the segment was airing and I was being interviewed at the same time. Well, I didn't know, but my producer friend had a surprise for me that morning. He went that night and did a whole bunch of research until he found Private Scott Rainey, who was from Texas in the 143 Cavalry Division. He died of pneumonia, was a prisoner at Camp Douglas, and before he enlisted in the military, he was living on a farm where he worked for Saul and Salome Rainey, who were Jewish and taught him all about Judaism. That's why he told me Patrick Rainey. He had two families, and the one and the last family he had, because he was 23 when he died and died of pneumonia at 23, just like he told me, in that cemetery. And there he is, right in black and white. It was one of the most amazing experiences I had. And it blew my mind. It blew everybody else's mind. And that's why I don't take this stuff for granted, because I kept getting experiences like that. And I'm going to share even more with you. That's just one. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and come back, join me here for other stories, because this is the adventures of a psychic therapist and medium. Take care. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.